To shop your shelves means to check out your fridge, your freezer, and your pantry shelves and see what needs cooking. Today, I'm going to make a turkey pot pie and turkey noodle soup. Why those two items? Well, shopping my fridge shelves, I realized that I had a half of a turkey breast left over from Sunday dinner, and I need to do something with that, as well as some carrots that are getting to be just a little bit hairy, so I need to use those up as well. So now let's get these meals started. This video is brought to you by Aprondiva. Pretty and practical, we believe that an apron can be a homemaker's best accessory. Visit us at www.aprondiva.com. And I've also got a bag of these freezer soup vegetables, and the use by date is March of 2022. Well, we all know that the best by date is just a suggestion. However, since these have been in the freezer for a while, if they're in there too long, they can pick up a little freezer burn. So I'm going to be using these today as well for my turkey pot pie. And then two of the other things that are in my fridge that I need to get used up. One is this carton of vegetable broth. I inadvertently opened 2 cartons of vegetable broth when I was making dinner on Sunday. So I got to get this used up. And then I've got this box of Pillsbury pie crust that's been in there for a while, so I need to get those used up. So I've got all the fixings I need to make a turkey pot pie and turkey noodle soup. So since I'm going to be making 2 dishes, I'm going to go ahead and cut up all my onions and my celery and my carrots at one time. And then I'll divide them according to what I need for each recipe. Saving these onion skins and also my carrot peelings in the freezer bag to make vegetable broth at a later time. So I'm going to set aside about a little less than a half a cup of onion for the pot pie. And the rest of this onion is going to be for the turkey noodle soup. And these carrot shavings I will put in the freezer and save for my next batch of vegetable broth. So that's why I always give them a good scrubbing before I start to peel them. And I've got my oven turned on and preheated to 425 for the pot pie. Now I've got my pie crust sitting out on the counter so it can come to room temperature. And once I get all my goodies chopped up, I'll get it rolled out and placed in the pie dish. And moms, just so you know, you can make this same dish with chicken instead of turkey. If you've got a leftover rotisserie chicken or roasted chicken or baked chicken, You can certainly do the same thing. Just swap out the turkey for chicken. So as I said earlier, you can use this same recipe to make chicken noodle soup or chicken pot pie, just as you can with the turkey pot pie. Now I'm going to need about 2 cups of turkey for each recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and get that divided up, and then I'll just chop the turkey up into small pieces, and then get it divided up for each one. So, and I'm going to save the bones so that I can make bone broth. You can see I've got carrot shavings and different things like that on here from when I made this roasted turkey breast on Sunday. So sometimes it'll be roasted chicken or roasted turkey on Sunday and then chicken and dumplings on Wednesday. But this time I thought I would do turkey noodle soup and turkey pot pie. And like I said, I had those pie crusts in the fridge for a while, and they definitely needed to be cooked. So that was the impetus to make the pot pie, as well as having all that vegetable broth in the fridge open. I had ran out of my own broth that wasn't frozen, so I opened a carton quickly and not paying attention and opened a second one. So I'm just going to chop this breast up into little bite-sized cubes. This turkey's delicious. It was so good when I made it on Sunday. Okay. So we got about 2 cups right there. And truth be told, I like a really meaty soup. For the chicken pot pie or the turkey pot pie, I like that to be meaty too, but I'm thinking I like more veggies in that than meat. Okay. And again, I'm saving the bones. The thing about the pot pie though is I want to make sure the pieces are definitely bite-sized. The pieces can be a little larger in the soup if you like, but in the pot pie they definitely need to be bite-sized. So in case you're wondering why I keep calling this my simulated live stream, it's because that's what I was trying to do today. I wanted to simulate a live stream for you and just act as if I was cooking live and seeing how things turned out. But I realized whereas Miss Leona makes it look so easy and Rachel Ray makes it look so easy, it's not as easy as it looks. So that's why I left as much footage in it as I did, is because this is my live stream. So when you see me sneaking a little bite of turkey, well, that's what I would really be doing in the kitchen, and you would catch it all live. Now that I've got my turkey all cut up, I'm going to set it aside so that I can roll out the pie crust. And I'll just roll out the bottom crust initially. I'll roll out the top crust later because I don't want to roll it out now, have it folded in half and in quarters, and then leave it sitting and then it possibly stick together. Now to my young homemakers, before you roll out your pie dough, make sure that you lightly flour your board. And then you're going to also follow that up with lightly flouring your rolling pin so that your dough doesn't stick to the board or to the rolling pin. Now I used a little flour to flour the board just so it didn't stick. It just allowed me to roll it out a little better. And then you saw I also put a little bit of flour on the rolling pin to allow that to allow me to roll out without having any problem as well. And then I'll just press the pie crust to the little indentations here on my pie dish, and then I will trim that off. So now this is ready for me to fill. So I will set it aside and get the filling ready. Now it's time to make the sauce for the turkey pot pie, and I like to get started with a hot pot, and then I'll add in 2 tablespoons of butter. You can use olive oil or whatever oil of your choice, but when I'm making turkey pot pie, I like to use butter. Once the butter has melted, I'll pour in my carrots and my celery. I like to get those started first just because it takes them a while to tenderize, and I'll add my onion later. One thing I want to point out is that when I add the flour to the butter and the veggies, it immediately begins to thicken up. And then once I add the broth, it thins out. And I needed to thicken up again for the sauce to be ready for me to use in the dish. So it will take some time for that sauce to come to a point where it's nice and thick. Now here's the other thing. I like for my pot pies to be really saucy. I don't like them to be too thick. So I'll add a little bit more broth if it looks to me like it's getting too thick, because it will thicken up more in baking. You'll notice that I had the bag of frozen mixed vegetables sitting aside. I just had them sitting on the counter while I took care of some other things. That way, when I was ready to use them, they were thawed out. So I wasn't putting frozen veggies into my hot sauce. We're going to follow the same process with the top pie crust as we did with the bottom crust. I'm going to roll it out. And then I'm going to measure the crust to see if it's big enough to fit over my pie dish and have a little bit of overlap. Then I'm going to fold it in half and then to quarters. Then I'm going to gently drape the pie crust over the top of my turkey pot pie mixture, making sure there's plenty of overlap so that I can pinch or crimp up my edges. And of course, I'll trim off what's not needed. Another tip for my young homemakers: when you're baking a pie, be sure to vent the pie by poking some holes in the center of the pie crust. I just use a fork to do that, but you can also use a butter knife. And if on the edges of your pie crust there are a few gaps, you can always fill those in with some of the pie dough that you trimmed away. So the pot pie is in the oven and it's going to need to bake at 425 for about 35 or 40 minutes. And the last 15 minutes of the baking time, I'm going to take it out and put an aluminum foil collar around the edges so that they don't get too brown. Now to my young homemakers out there, one of the things that I hope you get from watching this video is how easy it is to make 2 meals at once so that you can maximize your time. So I'm using a leftover turkey breast from Sunday dinner to make a to make a turkey pot pie and turkey noodle soup. And if you have a family who won't eat leftovers, and trust me, I get it, because my sister's husband would not eat leftovers. She'd make something new every day. This is a way to do it. I took that turkey breast, I cut it in half, and then I used half for the soup and then half for the pot pie, but I've created 2 completely different meals, so there's no way that your family would know that you were using leftovers. And the other thing I want you to take away from this is that you don't have to roast everything yourself. You can pick up a rotisserie chicken at Kroger or Costco or somewhere like that for between $5 and $8 and get 2, maybe 3 meals out of it, depending upon how you use it. But using a rotisserie chicken or a deli turkey breast for something like this is certainly a way to get a weeknight meal on the table pretty quickly. And then I put my carrot scraps, and I also have my onion peels, and I also have my turkey bones in here. And this is going to go in the freezer, and then it'll come out when I'm ready to make my next rendition of bone broth. And let me show you something I got to. I know I'm rambling, but I have got to show you this. So my sister Mickey Blue Skies gave me this for Christmas, and it is called Do You Know the Muffin Pan? And she knows that right now I am really into making muffins. However, This booklet has taken making muffins to a new level. I like to make like savory muffins. I might put a little bit of green chilies in them or some black pepper and cheddar cheese and things like that. But this book, it's talking about using mushrooms or bacon and making like breakfast muffins, but like making breakfast muffins that can serve as like a main dish. So I'm looking forward to using it, and then I'll let you see when I make some things. But I'm gonna get this stuff put up and go ahead and get started making that turkey noodle soup. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started with this turkey noodle soup, but I wanna show you a couple things first. I'm using my Caraway Dutch oven, and one of the things that I want to show you about the Caraway cookware is that they have these little, I don't know, heating plates or heating elements or whatever on the bottom. And what I've learned is that if I get the heat around here on the pot, then it starts to get a little bit discolored. And then you guys know I do not like nasty bottom pots. So it's hard to get that off. And I've scrubbed at it with some baking soda, with all kinds of things. And this part's not coming off. So what I've learned to do is when I'm using this one, I will use either the medium or the single setting so that the heating element on my cooktop is only in this area here, which will then heat the entire pot. And then I don't end up with those dark marks around my pan. Like with this one here, you can see it can get a little bit lightly discolored. So I try to make sure that when I am cooking with these, that I have my heating element just in this area here. So I don't have it up on like the third or the second level. I try to keep it on the first level. And that's just a little aside. So my pot is hot. And I'm adding my oil, which happens to be butter. And I know Miss Leona's been cooking without butter, but that's not what I'm doing today. And I did get a jar of my turkey broth out of the freezer. This is turkey broth that I put up on Sunday after I did the chicken and dressing and turkey and dressing meal that we had, and this is what was left over. So I'm going to use that in this turkey noodle soup, but it is still frozen. So that's how I ended up opening those other two boxes. So I'm going to pop it in the microwave and thaw it out. And while it's thawing out, I'll be getting this part ready. So because the carrots and the celery take longer to cook, I'm going to put the carrots in and the celery in and let that begin to saute before I add the onion. But I'll give it a good stir so that it's got the butter nicely coating it. And then I'll also add my thyme and my rosemary in this as well, so to speak, to put a bloom on those spices. Now I like to use a combination of thyme and rosemary in my soup. So I use this little grinder to chop it up for me, and it just really helps me to get it nice and small. And now I'll add my onion. And I might have added the thyme and rosemary off camera. I might not have had it positioned properly, but you can see the little sprinkles. The rosemary and thyme is in there. I'm going to sprinkle in just a little salt and just about a quarter teaspoon of Miss Leona's house seasoning. It's got garlic powder, onion powder, and pepper in it. And I don't like a lot of pepper, so that's why I'm just using a quarter teaspoon, because I would tend to put about a quarter teaspoon of pepper in here. And I'm going to let this cook until these veggies are tender, and then I will add my broth. My husband's been really good this morning. He's working on some things in his studio, So he said, babe, you can go ahead and film in the kitchen. I'm going to be up here for a while. So I'm trying to get things done as quickly as possible, because I know when it's time for tip-off, quiet time is over. Now I'm going to start to add my broth. So that's about 1.5 cups of turkey broth. Looks like I got some spices left over from Sunday's roast. I just took the broth that was left in the bottom of the pan and put it in that ball plastic jar, which is perfect. It's one of those ball plastic canning jars. Now I'll add this vegetable broth that I had in the refrigerator. And there'll probably be about 8-10 cups of broth altogether. It just depends. I like my soup to be very brothy. I like a lot of broth in my soup. And notice I only put in a very small amount of salt, pepper, house seasoning, and the other herbs. I can always add more, but if I get too much in, I can't take it out. So now I'm going to let this come to a boil so that when I'm ready to add my noodles for cooking, I can. The turkey will be the very last thing I put in there. I'll also add a teaspoon of my chili sauce, maybe 2 teaspoons, just to give it a little flavor. I use my chili sauce in a lot of things. It just gives it flavor, but no heat. Now while I'm waiting for this to come to a boil, I'm going to go ahead and get my kitchen cleaned up. But I thought I would show you my house seasoning. This is Miss Leona's house seasoning, and it's equal parts garlic powder or garlic granules, onion powder, and pepper. Equal parts garlic, onion, and pepper. So if you use like a whole teaspoon in there, it could be just a little bit spicy. Now Miss Leona likes it spicy. She likes the heat. I don't, so I try to use a little bit less, but I will link her video in the description box below where she shows how to make it. Ooh, it's only been 30 minutes, but look at this. That's just what I did not want to have happen. I didn't want that to get that brown, and it's only been about 35 minutes. I should have paid more attention. I'm so busy talking. Oh well, that's what happens when you don't pay attention, ladies. So you can see Miss Denise sometimes gets distracted. I got busy working on that soup, and I did keep an eye on the time, but evidently not well enough. I don't think I'm going to put that back on the oven. I don't think I'm going to put that back on the oven. It's looking pretty good to me. Everything that was in it was already cooked when I put it in it, with the exception of the frozen vegetables, and they were thawed out. So they are pretty much warmed up by now. So I'm going to just leave that sit like it is. And that is not the look I wanted to share with you today, but that's where we are. So you guys, even sometimes Miss Denise does have something that is not as pretty as she would like. Now, would it taste good? Yes, it'll taste just fine. I might end up trimming off those edges in my pie dish, or rather on my plate. But other than that, it should be delicious. And you know, that just goes to show too that even though it said set the oven at 425, different ovens heat differently, and so 425 might have been too high for this dish in this oven. I probably should have set it for 350 or 375, which is what I typically will cook in this oven, but usually not more than 400. But here we are. Now that the broth is boiling, I'm going to add my noodles. And I like to use these really skinny noodles when I am making my soup. I use some of the wider noodles when I'm doing casseroles or dumplings, but for soup, I like to use these little skinny noodles like this. And I will break the noodles up. So I will just kind of give them a little crunch like that, because I don't like the noodles to be too large in my soup. And I'll start with a cup of noodles and just kind of see how that's looking. Maybe another handful. This gives me noodles of different sizes. So this is probably about 2 cups of noodles. And if I end up with too many noodles, I can always add another 4 cups of broth to thin it out. But I think I'm going to be okay. And I waited to add the noodles to the broth because I wanted to make sure that the carrots, the onions, and the celery were tender. Whereas I might like just a teensy weeny bit of a crunch on the carrot. I don't like the onions and the celery to still be crunchy. So I wanted to make sure those were all nice and tender. So now I've got the noodles in, and once the noodles are done, then I'll add the turkey. A lot about that turkey pot pie and how dark it turned out. So homemakers, what I want you to think about is this: keep an eye on things a lot more closely, and if it says cook it for 40 minutes, then at about 30 minutes you should probably checking it. So I should have set my timer for a little bit earlier, and I did not, but it wasn't exactly 30 minutes yet. Something else I thought about was when I did roll it out, I did feel like the dough was just a little bit stiff. It was a little dry, and my pie crust was well past the best by date. So maybe if you use it before the best by date or the use by date, it would be a little bit more moist and a little bit more elastic. I don't know. However, I'm trying to treat this as a live stream. So on a live stream, when it comes out of the oven, that's what you see and that's what you saw. So there's that. And then speaking of there's that, you guys know Jerry Barber used to always tease me because I would always say there's that, and she sent me an apron and a bag that has there's that on there. And you know that her daughter had been missing for about 6 months, and her daughter has been found safely. So Lord Jesus, I want to thank you so much for allowing that child to be found safely. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. So we were all praying and hoping that the child would be found safely, and she has been found. So, getting back to the task at hand, I thought I would show you while that's boiling away, I thought I would show you some of the things that I use that are in my kitchen all the time. And one of the things that I do use quite a bit is my rolling pin. So homemakers, if you don't have a rolling pin, you need to get one. This particular one I picked up thrifting, but I have one of my own that I've gotten, I don't know, years ago that I've had. So I do have 2. But if you don't have one, pick one up. And I'll put some links in the description box for some of these things. This little peeler is something I use almost every other day. I use it to peel carrots. I use it to peel potatoes. It is just such a lifesaver. And then if I want to have my cute little carrot ribbons, I can use it for that as well. My ball plastic canning jars, which I use to freeze my chicken and bone broth in. And then this 2-cup measure, it's really nice when you've got to put in 2 cups of something. You can just use this instead of having to get 2 1-cup measures. I really like these because they do have 4 sizes. They have 1 cup, half a cup, 1/3 cup, and then 1/4 cup. And they do fit down into the mouths of most of the jars, the large ball size canning jars that I use. So there are those. And then I have this set of measuring spoons. They nest into each other. We have them from 1/8 teaspoon all the way up to 1 tablespoon. And they are so nice. And I really like them because they do fit into the mouths of most of my spice jars. This is the 1 teaspoon measure, and it does go into the mouth of my spice jars, so I like that. And then, of course, my saucepan. This is my Caraway cookware saucepan, and I showed you it earlier when I was over at the stove using it, and I washed it up, and I used baking soda around the bottom of it to try to keep it nice and neat. So these are some things that are always in my kitchen that I use quite a bit, and I will link them in the description box below so that you can check them out, and you should have something similar to these items in your kitchen as well. These are kind of like some of the workhorse items, and you may say, but you know what, I don't do any baking. Well, maybe you don't do any baking now, but maybe one day you will, or maybe you don't want to make your own pie crust, but you do buy those that are pre-made and you have to roll out. Well, you need a rolling pin for those. Okay, let's take a look at this soup because I don't want to make another mistake. Oh yeah, this looks really good. And I put in just enough noodles. I always wonder if I have in enough noodles in the beginning, but by the time the noodles actually cook and thicken up, you can see there are plenty of noodles in here. Now let's see if the noodles are done. And the noodles are nice and tender. Now here's my turkey noodle soup. And that's what we are having for lunch today. We are having turkey noodle soup with corn muffins. And then I'll probably make some kind of a green salad on the side, or maybe some cinnamon apples. Let me taste it just so you can see me do that. But I have tasted the broth a couple of times, so I already know that it's tasting good, because if the broth is good, the soup is good. It's delicious. Absolutely delicious. I'm going to serve it with these corn muffins. I made these the other day, so they'll be nice on the side, or you can have some crackers or some other kind of bread, whatever it is that trips your trigger. We tend to like corn muffins, or we like crackers, so we're having these corn muffins today with our soup. And then here is the turkey pot pie. We are having this for dinner tomorrow, so I've got today's dinner and then tomorrow's dinner already done. So we're having this tomorrow. And I'll probably just end up cutting off those dark crusts so that I don't have that burnt taste to it. Other than that, it should be fine. Now here's one other thing. I was able to make these meals because I already had everything I needed to make them within the house. So when you think about making a meal plan, I typically don't have to make a meal plan per se, because I purchase my groceries utilizing my 20-item capsule grocery haul, so that everything I have in the fridge already works together. I can pull out anything and it goes together to be able to make a meal or a combination of meals. If you missed that video, my 20-item capsule grocery haul, I will put it in the description box below. And also, when I created that, Miss Leona at Ebony Ivy and Time with Leona Dooley also created a 20-item capsule grocery haul. And ours are just a little bit different because, of course, we have different kitchens, we have different tastes, and our families like different things. So I will be sure to link her 20-item capsule grocery haul in the description box as well. Now, before I go, I wanted to show you what to do if you end up in a situation like this. So what you can do is just trim all of that dark part off. So we're having this for dinner tomorrow, but I don't want him to see that. So I'm just going to come through here and we're just going to trim all of that off. And then I do have a video where I show you how to make your own butter pie crust. But I wanted to show you today how you could get it done quickly by using a pre-made pie crust. However, you want to make sure you keep an eye on it, and probably would be best if you used one that was fresh. However, I don't think it was the freshness that caused this problem. I think Miss Denise just didn't pay enough attention. Sometimes that happens, and when it does, you have to figure out how to salvage it. Like, this is a meal, we can't throw it out, so there. So we've got all of that off the edge there. And whereas the top of the crust is brown, it's not so bad. So now let's just get all of this up. Now that's night and day. Your family will never need to know that there was a little mishap. I am often asked, do I do individual coaching? And today that answer is yes. I have recently opened a membership on Patreon where I can be more responsive to your individual needs. So if you're struggling and you would like some individual coaching, sign up on my Patreon link. It's free to sign up, but then there are also a couple of tiers there that you can choose between, and one of those tiers is the individual coaching. And let me invite you to sign up for my newsletter, The Homemaker's Journal. It comes out about every 6 weeks, and it is chock full of information, tips and tricks, and just things to help you navigate your homemaker's journey. And if you hate to do laundry, if you positively, absolutely hate to do laundry, do sign up for my Laundry Lab Masterclass, and we are kicking that off with a 10-day in the Laundry Lab challenge starting on National Laundry Day, which is April 15th. So be sure to sign up for whichever one of those trips your trigger. So we're having this pot pie for dinner today, and I popped it in the microwave to let it warm up, and it is absolutely delicious. Absolutely delicious. And whereas it is a little browner than they would normally be, the crust tastes just fine. So your family should love this meal.